The war had ended only 3 days ago, but the memories still clung to Captain Marcus like smoke that refused to leave his lungs. He sat on the edge of the bed in a room that was far too large, far too silent for a soldier who had lived with the thunder of battle for years. The walls were made of smooth silver stone, glowing faintly as though they held the light of captured stars. It was beautiful in a way, alien and cold, but to Marcus it felt like a cage. He was not chained. He was not locked in. The doors opened when he approached them. The servants bowed when they brought food, but still he felt like a prisoner. This was the palace of the alien queen, the same queen who had once commanded fleets that darkened human skies, the same queen whose orders had left human cities burning. And now somehow he was her guest. The victory had not been clean. Humanity's fleets had bled across the stars. Thousands of ships were gone. Millions of lives ended. Yet somehow, against every prediction, against every cruel calculation of enemy machines, the humans had stood. They had fought with nothing left but their stubborn refusal to break, and in the end, they had won. The queen had surrendered, her empire shattered. And Marcus, a soldier who had survived too many battles, found himself taken to her palace instead of sent home. He sat there, staring at the floor, his hands trembling slightly. He told himself it was exhaustion, not fear. A soldier wasn't supposed to be afraid anymore, not after what he had faced. But in the quiet, when there was no gunfire, no commands shouted in his ear, fear found him. It was different now, sharper, heavier. He was not afraid of dying. He was afraid of not knowing what came next. The silence pressed against him until even the sound of his own breath felt too loud. He closed his eyes, trying to push away the memories. The sight of friends falling, the sound of ships cracking, apart in the void. He told himself to breathe, to rest, to take advantage of this strange peace. But rest was a stranger to him now. Then it happened. The door slid open without a sound. Marcus stiffened instantly, every muscle ready to fight though he had no weapon. His eyes darted to the figure that stepped inside, and for a moment he thought it was a dream. She moved like shadow and fire, her steps soft on the cold floor. The queen. She was not wearing her crown. She was not surrounded by guards or wrapped in the robes of power. She came alone. She came quietly. And as Marcus's eyes followed her, he saw the robe she wore slide from her shoulders, falling soundlessly to the ground. For a heartbeat, time itself seemed to stop. She stood before him, unarmed, unguarded, her silver-marked skin glowing faintly in the soft light. She did not look like the untouchable ruler who had once commanded entire star systems. She looked human in some strange, terrifying way. Her eyes, silver like liquid metal, locked onto his with a weight that made his chest tighten, and then she spoke. Her voice was soft, but each word struck like a blade wrapped in silk. "You're mine tonight." Marcus's heart thudded in his chest. He had faced alien beasts, burning skies and death countless times, but nothing had ever left him so uncertain as those words. She was not giving him an order as a conqueror. She was not claiming him as a prisoner. It was something deeper, something he could not yet understand. For a moment, neither of them moved. The silence returned, heavier than before, but it was not the empty silence of his loneliness. It was charged, alive, trembling with something he could not name. The war was over. The galaxy had shifted. But here, in this quiet alien room, a new kind of battle was beginning. One fought not with weapons, but with hearts. And Marcus, though he didn't yet know it, was about to face the hardest choice of his life. Marcus didn't move at first. His training told him to stay alert, to be ready for a trap. He had been taught to expect deceit from enemies, to never let his guard fall. Yet this moment felt different. The queen had not entered with guards, she had not come with weapons, and she had not spoken like a ruler giving orders. She had spoken like someone making a claim, personal, raw, and filled with meaning he could not yet understand. His hands curled into fists on his knees as he looked at her. The robe still lay on the floor, untouched, like a symbol that she had shed not just fabric but the power it represented. She was the queen of a fallen empire, yet she stood before him like a woman stripped of titles and pride. Her silver eyes never left him. They glowed faintly in the dim light of the room, and Marcus felt a shiver travel down his spine. He was used to enemies trying to dominate him with fear or strength, but this was something else. She wasn't trying to scare him. She was showing herself. Vulnerable. Open. "You broke my fleets," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange mix of sorrow and respect. "You stood when others knelt. You fought when surrender was the easy choice. Now I claim you." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Claim me?" he asked, his voice low, cautious. "I am no one's property." Her lips curved slightly, not in mockery but in something like admiration. "Not as a prisoner, not as a servant. I claim you because you are unlike any being I have known. Your kind, you burn in ways we cannot. I need that fire near me. I need to understand it." Marcus's heart pounded. He had seen soldiers die with courage. He had seen ships hold their ground when defeat was certain. He had seen humanity refuse to kneel, again and again, even when the cost was unbearable. But hearing those words from her, the very woman who had ordered his people's destruction, felt like salt in an open wound. "Why me?" Marcus finally asked, his voice quieter now, but sharp with suspicion. Her gaze softened, almost tender. "Because you stood in the ashes and still looked forward. My people cannot do that. We crumble when our power crumbles, you humans. You rise again. I watched you. I fought you. And when the galaxy told me you should have broken, you refused. That is why you, Marcus. That is why tonight." For the first time since she had entered, Marcus felt something shift inside him. He had seen her once far away on the battlefield screens, a figure of unreachable power. He had imagined her as untouchable, merciless, yet here she was standing in his room, bearing her soul more than her skin. He tried to push it away. He tried to remind himself of the horrors her fleets had brought to his people. But the truth was right in front of him. She wasn't speaking as a queen. She wasn't speaking as a conqueror. She was speaking as someone who had lost everything and had chosen, in this moment, to reach out to the one person who had taken it all from her. Marcus looked down, his thoughts storming inside him. Every instinct told him this was dangerous. Every scar on his body told him she was his enemy. Yet something in her voice and her presence reached deeper than hatred. Something fragile, almost desperate, lingered in her words. Finally, he lifted his eyes and met hers again. "You think I'm stronger than I am," he said quietly. Her silver gaze did not waver. "No, I think you are human. And that is enough." The silence stretched between them again, but it was no longer the silence of emptiness. It was a silence filled with unspoken truths, with wounds that neither of them could hide. And Marcus realized that this night in this alien palace was not about conquest or surrender. It was about two broken souls standing in the ruins of war, searching for something neither of them could name. Marcus sat frozen for a long moment, her words echoing in his mind. "You are human, and that is enough." Simple words, yet they carried a weight heavier than any chain. He had been called many things in his life, soldier, captain, survivor, but never had someone looked at him, scars and all, and said that simply being human was enough. He wanted to push the thought away. He wanted to remind himself who she was, the queen whose fleets had scorched colonies, whose soldiers had hunted his comrades through forests and deserts, whose voice had declared war without mercy. But when he looked into her silver eyes, he didn't see the cold ruler of the empire. He saw something else: exhaustion, pain. A woman who had lost not only her crown, but her certainty. Marcus leaned back, his shoulders heavy with the burden of survival. He had lived through things others hadn't. He had seen starships crack in half and heard the cries of dying soldiers over the comm. He had pulled friends from the dirt, only to watch them fade away in his arms. Survival had not been victory for him. Survival was just survival. And yet she stood before him, speaking as if his survival meant something greater than he could understand. "Why do you say such things?" Marcus asked, his voice quiet, almost broken. Her eyes flickered, the glow dimming slightly as she took a step closer. "Because I must learn," she answered. "My people. We built an empire on strength, on fear. We thought power was enough to last forever. But when you broke our fleets, I saw the truth. Power fades, fear dies. But something in you humans does not die. Even when all else falls, you rise. I want to know that flame. I want to keep it near me." Marcus lowered his head, staring at his scarred hands. The words cut into him because they were true. Humanity had no great technology compared to her empire, no overwhelming weapons, no endless armies. What they had was something harder to explain. They had stubbornness, they had defiance. They had the ability to keep walking forward even when the path was made of fire and blood. The room shook with noise, alarms screaming, boots pounding in the hallway, rifles aimed at Daniel. Yet, in his heart, everything was quiet. He had already made his choice. He stood tall, his body a fragile shield between the alien girl and the guns of his own comrades. Every breath felt heavy, every second stretched long. He could feel her hand resting lightly against his back, trembling, yet giving him strength. The commander's eyes burned with rage. "Hayes, this is treason. You're protecting an enemy soldier." Daniel's voice cracked at first but grew steadier as he spoke. "She's not a soldier tonight. She's not an enemy. She's just someone who wants to live." The squad shifted, nervously. Some looked uncertain, their rifles shaking slightly in their hands. They had never seen one of their own stand like this before. The commander barked, "She's a threat to humanity. Move." Daniel clenched his fists. "No. The real threat is this war. Look at her. She has scars, fear, pain, just like us. If we can't see that, then what are we even fighting for?" The words hung in the air. For a moment, even the alarms seemed quieter. The soldier's eyes flickered between Daniel and the alien girl. Doubt spread like cracks in a wall, but the commander's face hardened. He raised his rifle. "Enough. You leave me no choice." The alien girl tensed behind Daniel, her breath quick and shallow. She whispered, "They'll kill you for this." Daniel glanced over his shoulder just enough to meet her glowing eyes. "Maybe, but I won't let them kill the truth." The commander shouted, "Fire!" Time slowed. The rifles clicked, but not all fired. Two soldiers hesitated, their eyes wide, their hands shaking. A single shot rang out, striking the wall beside Daniel. Sparks flew. The alien girl gasped, clutching his arm, but Daniel did not move. He planted his feet firmly, refusing to step. "Aside." "Don't do this," Daniel shouted to his squad. "You know me. I've fought beside you, bled beside you. If I'm willing to die here, then ask yourselves why. Ask yourselves if maybe, just maybe, everything we were told is a lie." The soldiers froze. Confusion spread across their faces. They looked at Daniel, then at the trembling figure behind him. Her glowing eyes were no longer filled with fear. They were filled with tears. "She's not our monster," Daniel continued, his voice raw. "She's proof that we've been blind. I won't look away, and neither should you." Another silence fell. The commander growled, stepping forward, his rifle aimed directly at Daniel's chest. "You are finished, Hayes." Daniel's heart raced. He knew this could be his last breath, but strangely he felt calm. For the first time in years, he wasn't running from fear. He wasn't hiding behind orders. He was standing for something real. The alien girl's hand tightened on his back. Her voice, though weak, carried across the room. "Please, don't kill him. He is the first human who has truly seen me." Something in her words struck the soldiers deeper than Daniel's defiance. Their rifles lowered, hesitation spreading, like wildfire. One soldier muttered, "She doesn't sound like an enemy." Another whispered, "She looks just like us." Scared. Broken. The commander snapped. "Enough. Raise your weapons." But the squad no longer obeyed with the same certainty. The lie of war had cracked, and through it, truth was shining. Daniel locked eyes with his commander. His voice was low but firm. "If you kill her, you'll have to kill me first." The commander's hands trembled with fury. He pressed the trigger halfway, but his own soldiers hesitated, blocking his line of fire. The unity of blind obedience was broken. The alarms still screamed, but inside that room something greater was happening. A single soldier's defiance had planted doubt. One human's refusal to look away had lit a flame. The alien girl's tears fell freely now, glowing like liquid stars on her cheeks. She whispered so only Daniel could hear, "You gave me back my life." And though Daniel's body trembled, his heart felt stronger than ever. He knew the cost of his choice would be high, but at least for the first time he was standing as himself. The red alarm still wailed across the base, but inside Daniel's room, another battle was being fought, a silent war of hearts and choices. Daniel stood tall, his body still shielding the alien girl, his chest rising and falling with sharp breaths. The squad in front of him was divided. Some lowered their rifles, doubt written on their faces. Others still aimed, waiting for the commander's word. And the commander himself, furious and trembling, kept his weapon locked on Daniel. "Last chance," the commander growled. "Step aside, Hayes, or I'll end this myself." Daniel met his eyes, steady and calm. "If you shoot, you'll only prove everything wrong about us. You'll prove we're as blind as they say we are." His voice carried a weight no training could give. It was not the voice of a soldier repeating orders. It was the voice of a man who had found his truth. Behind him, the alien girl whispered, "Don't die for me." Daniel tilted his head slightly, enough for her to hear. "I'm not dying for you, I'm living for what's right." The commander's finger tightened on the trigger. Time stretched, every heartbeat loud in Daniel's ears. He braced himself for the shot, but it never came. One of the soldiers stepped forward, blocking the commander's aim. "Sir, he's right. Look at her. She's not fighting us. She's not armed. She looks like us. Scared, tired. If Hayes believes in her, maybe we should too." Another soldier lowered his rifle, then another. One by one, the weapons dipped toward the floor. The commander's face twisted with rage as he realized his control was slipping. "Traitors," he spat. "All of you." Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, just humans. Finally being human." The commander's eyes burned with hate, but he saw the line had broken. His own squad no longer followed blindly. The lie of the war, so long unquestioned, had cracked open because of a single act of defiance. With a snarl, the commander backed toward the door. "This isn't over. You'll face trial, Hayes. You'll all face trial." He stormed out, boots echoing down the corridor. The alarm still screamed, but inside the room, a deep silence followed. Daniel's legs finally gave way, and he sank onto the edge of his bunk, his chest heaving. The alien girl knelt beside him, her glowing eyes filled with tears. She touched his shoulder gently. "You risked everything," she whispered. Daniel gave a tired smile. "No. I finally gave something worth keeping." For a long time they sat in silence, their breaths the only sound. Around them, soldiers shifted uneasily, but none raised their weapons again. Something had changed, something that could not be undone. Outside, the war continued, but inside this room, the first crack of peace had been born. Weeks later, the story spread. Quietly at first, whispered among soldiers, then louder, carried from camp to camp. The tale of the night when a human soldier had stood in front of his own squad, protecting an alien girl with nothing but his voice and his will. Some called him a traitor. Others called him a fool. But more and more began to call him something else, a reminder. Because when they looked at their enemy after hearing Daniel's story, they began to wonder. They began to see not monsters, but faces. And once seen, those faces could not be unseen. Years later, when the war finally ended, Monuments were built on both sides. They did not honor admirals or generals. They did not honor the endless battles or victories. They honored a single night, inside a small, metal barracks when one soldier and one alien girl broke the story of hate. The monument did not show weapons. It showed two figures, one human, one alien, standing together, fragile but unbroken, and carved beneath them were the words that had started it all. Don't look away. The alien girl lived. She was no longer nameless, no longer a shadow. She carried scars, but she carried freedom too. And though Daniel Hayes bore the weight of betrayal and sacrifice, history remembered him not for treason, but for courage. Because in the end, humanity's greatest strength was never its weapons, nor its armies. It was the stubborn, unshakable choice of a single soldier who refused to look away. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He thought of the human refugees he had seen in broken cities, children hiding in basements while the sky burned above them. Their eyes had carried the same emptiness, and now he saw it in hers. He lowered his head, into his hands. This war, it's killing all of us. Her eyes softened, and for the first time her voice carried no edge. Yes, it kills slowly. It kills loudly. It kills even when you live. Daniel raised his head, meeting her gaze. I don't know why I'm not turning you in. Because you see me, she said simply. Not the lie. Not the monster. Just me. The room grew quiet again, but the silence was different now. It wasn't empty. It was alive, full of something unspoken that connected them. Daniel wanted to ask her more. He wanted to ask her name, her world, her story. But before he could, the base alarm suddenly blared outside. The sound was sharp and merciless, a reminder that the war never truly slept. Red light flashed through the barracks window, bathing the walls in warning. The alien girl flinched at the sound, her body tightening like a cornered animal. Daniel instinctively stood and moved toward the door, then stopped, torn between duty and the secret sitting in his room. They'll find me, she whispered. Her voice was calm, but her glowing eyes shone with fear. If they search, they'll find me. Daniel's pulse raced. His whole life had been built on orders. Orders to fight, to follow, to never question. But now the war had walked into his room, shed its armor, and revealed a face that was painfully human. If he protected her, he would be a traitor. If he exposed her, he would destroy the fragile truth she had given him. His hands clenched into fists. For years he had fought to survive. But what was survival worth if it cost him his soul? The girl's voice broke his thoughts. If you give me away, I will not hate you. I will only know that you could not see me after all. Her words cut, deeper than any bullet. Daniel turned toward her, his heart heavy, his throat tight. He wanted to scream at the world, at the commanders, at the endless war that demanded he choose between his duty and his humanity. He took one long breath. And, for the first time in years, Daniel Hayes realized that the weight of war was not carried in guns or bombs. It was carried in choices, in the small, fragile moments when one soul decided whether to see another as real or not at all. And tonight, that choice was his. The alarm lights painted the barracks red. Sirens screamed outside, echoing through the steel walls, shaking the dew floor beneath Daniel's boots. Soldiers' voices rang out in the distance, shouting orders, rushing into position. The war had reached closer again, and the base was preparing to meet it. But inside Daniel's small room, the air was heavier than even the alarm. The alien girl stood near the corner, her arms still wrapped around herself, but her eyes fixed. Only on him. Hide, Daniel whispered urgently, his heart racing. They'll come in here. She shook her head slowly. No. I am done hiding. Daniel stepped closer, desperate. If they see you, they'll kill you before I can even speak. Her gaze did not waver. Her voice was quiet, but every word carried the strength of steel. Then let them. But before they do, I want you to see me. Truly. Daniel felt his chest tighten. She was already standing before him, vulnerable and unarmed. But there was something more in her words. Something deeper. He watched as she let her arms fall to her sides. Her scars no longer hidden, her trembling no longer disguised. You humans, she began softly, see us as shadows, as beasts with no heart. My kind is taught the same about you, but that is not who I am, and it is not who you are. Look at me, soldier. Don't look away. Not this time. Daniel's throat went dry. His instincts screamed to glance away, to shield himself from the weight of her truth. But he forced his eyes to stay on her, not on her strange silver glow, not on her alien form, but on the fragile living person who stood before him. He saw the scars that spoke of chains. He saw the way her shoulders shook even though her voice was strong. He saw the faint trace of tears drying on her cheek. For the first time, he saw not an enemy but a story written in pain. Daniel's voice came out as a whisper, heavy with emotion. Why are you doing this? Why me? The alien girl's glowing, eyes softened though her lips trembled. Because if even one human sees me as real, then I know I am not lost. And if I fall tonight, I will not vanish as a shadow. I will die as myself. Her words cut into Daniel's soul. He thought of the friends he had buried, the civilians he had watched disappear in fire, the countless faces swallowed by war, how many of them had vanished unseen, forgotten as nothing more than numbers in a report. And now, here was someone, an alien, his supposed enemy, begging him not for safety, not for freedom, but for the simple truth of being seen. He felt something shift inside him, something he had not felt in years, the raw ache of humanity. I see you, he whispered, his voice trembling but steady. I see you. For a moment her face broke. A tear slid down her glowing cheek, but her eyes held a strange light. Relief, sorrow, and something like gratitude. The room grew still. The alarms outside seemed distant, almost drowned out by the silent connection between them. Then came the pounding at the door. Fists hammered against metal and a commanding voice roared, "Private Hayes, report now." Daniel's pulse jumped. The moment shattered. He turned his head toward the door, then back to her. She didn't move. She only stood there, her chin lifted, her eyes still locked on him. Do what you must, she whispered. But don't let my truth vanish with me. Daniel's heart raced. He had seconds to decide. If he opened that door and revealed her, she would be gone forever. If he tried to hide her, he would be branded a traitor. The choice burned in his chest. But as he looked at her, scarred, trembling, yet unbroken, Daniel Hayes realized that war was no longer a matter of orders or survival. War was a mirror, and for the first time he had chosen to look into it without turning away. The pounding grew louder. The door hissed, beginning to unlock, and Daniel knew his next decision would define everything. The door shook under the pounding fists. The metallic hiss of the lock system filled the room. In a few more seconds, the soldiers would burst inside. Daniel's hands were slick with sweat. His rifle leaned against the bunk only a step away. His training screamed inside his head, stand down, follow orders, protect the unit. But when he turned his eyes back to the alien girl still standing there in silence, he knew there was no simple choice left. She had not begged him to hide her. She had not pleaded for her life. She had only asked to be seen. And that truth burned inside Daniel like fire. The door cracked open. Red light from the alarms bled into the room. A voice thundered, "Private Hayes, step aside." Daniel's heart pounded. His pulse roared in his ears. He moved without thinking, placing himself in front of her, his body between her and the door, his arms spread wide as if his thin human frame could shield her from rifles and orders. "She's unarmed," Daniel shouted, his voice breaking through the noise. The squad leader pushed through the doorway, weapon raised, his face twisted with fury. "Out of the way, Hayes! That thing is the enemy!" "She's not." Daniel's voice shook, but his stance didn't falter. "Not tonight. Not here." The other soldiers hesitated, their rifles wavering between Daniel and the glowing figure behind him. Confusion flickered in their eyes. This wasn't what they expected. A human soldier standing against his own? It didn't fit the story they had been told. The commander snarled, "Private, you've lost your mind. She's a killer. Move, or I'll have you dragged out." Daniel felt his legs tremble, but he forced them to stay firm. His chest rose and fell with sharp breaths. He thought of the nights spent burying his friends, of the endless war that had stolen every piece of his hope. And he thought of her scars, her trembling voice, and her plea to be seen. For the first time in his life, he refused to obey. "No," Daniel said, his voice steady now, carrying a weight he had never felt before. "If you want her, you'll have to go through me." The room fell silent for a heartbeat. The alarms outside wailed, soldiers shouted, but inside everything froze. The alien girl behind him gasped softly, but Daniel didn't turn. His eyes locked with his commander's, and for the first time Daniel did not look away. "Do you even know what you're doing?" the commander spat. "Yes," Daniel whispered. "I'm being human." A heavy silence followed his words. The squad leader's finger hovered near the trigger, his jaw tight. The soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. None of them moved. Behind him, Daniel felt the alien girl's presence, fragile but alive. She hadn't spoken, but he sensed her tears, her silent gratitude, and somehow that gave him strength. "Please," Daniel tried again, his voice softer now. "She's just like us. She's not a monster. Can't you see that?" But his commander's face hardened. "I see only a traitor." The rifles lifted again. Daniel's heart thundered, but he stood tall, refusing to move. For years he had lived under orders, surviving only by killing. But now, facing the guns of his own people, he felt something strange, something almost peaceful. He had made his choice. The girl's hand touched his back, light as a whisper. He didn't turn, but he felt the warmth of her touch steady his soul. The commander raised his weapon higher, shouting, "Last chance, Hayes!" Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them, his voice calm. "I won't move."